This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports. You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host Keith Angle on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Everybody, excuse me, Keith Angle for TGI Sports Talk's College Football Huddle. How are you guys tonight? It's getting warm. My studio is on fire here tonight. My gosh, what a change in the weather. Should have thought about that and pulled some shades here earlier when I left my normal work time. Oh, anyway, hope you guys are all doing well. Lots of news in college football. We're going to jump in. I don't know about lots of news. There's lots of stuff going on. We're going to jump into the transfer portal a little tonight. We'll talk about, I'll get myself into another irritating NIL discussion. There's big news about some of the collectives and being considered boosters. I want to talk a little bit about, actually, we're going to jump into some actual football talk and talk about, which Texas team we think might be the first to make the college football playoff. Who knows when it might happen, but we'll talk about that. We'll jump into our mailbag. We might also talk about, if we have time, at some point in these shows, we're going to start talking about some of the great players at different positions in college football through the years. And maybe even some of the best players never to win a Heisman. Just some of the topics that will be on tap as we go forward this hot summer, waiting for college football to actually get played. That'd be nice, right? Listen, I want to thank all the groups, obviously, the college football groups that let me share the show. As we switch back to football, the views have been tremendous and the support has been tremendous. So I want to thank all of you. And please, if you're watching the show tonight, tomorrow on Roku at noon, go to Facebook and like and share this show, but also invite your friends to like. If you haven't liked TGI Sports Talk, please do. And invite your friends. The group is growing steadily, but I would like to get to that 2,000 mark here soon. What else? Oh, the Dream Ride. Let's not forget, too, we're here on Northeast Streaming Sports, as we always are, with our partners there at NESIP. And we're going to be a major partner, as I mentioned in the past couple shows, of the Dream Ride Experience, which is a fundraiser that will take place on August 26th through the 28th. Lots of stuff going on there, guys. It's all about raising money for the Homeland Foundation. $18 million they've raised to date doing things like these motorcycle rides, classic car rides, canine officer demonstrations, fire demonstrations, chili cook-offs, anything you can name they do. And we'll run a little ad for the foundation here in just a little bit. So get out there and support. It's a great event. Let's see. Tracy Sherlock. Hello, Tracy Sherlock. How are you tonight? Off topic, but the Ringmasters Devils got the number 2 pick, and Carlos got his wish with Trotz. Yeah, Tracy. That is off topic, yes, and we'll dive into it probably with Carlos on Friday, and I'm sure on the Sunday Stream of Consciousness. But oh my gosh, Carlos has got to be in his grief. I'm surprised I have not heard from him, to be honest with you, because you know what, Barry Trotz is going to be out of a job not long, because he's going to be, some franchise is going to scoop him up because he is one of the better coaches in the NHL. But let's not get off topic here too much. But tune in Friday if you want to hear more about that, Tracy, and bring your dad as well, because I'm sure Carlos will have lots to say. Oh, it's Rick. All right. Oh, Tracy Sherlock. Good grief. Sorry about that. I misread. I got these eyes here. So you're on your wife's phone. Carlos pulls those same tricks on me, when I'm on Dan Harris's show. He signs in on different devices as different people and tries to sneak attack us. So Tracy and Rick, make sure you tune in Friday. Carlos is, again, he'll be in, and again, Carlos, if you pop in here tonight, let's not talk about Barry Trotz too long tonight. Oh, gosh. I don't know. You guys got topics, bring them up, because we got an hour and a half to fill. We're going to talk about lots of stuff, though. I want to dive first, I think, into, boy, I can never find the stuff that I want. All right. So here we go. I thought we were going to have a short show tonight because I thought I was going to have to help out with another show that airs on NSIP right after this one, the J&B Talking Shop with Jim Jeffcoat and Byron Williams. But that got straightened out, and I won't have to jump. So we'll be able to do our full hour and a half tonight. And I hope you guys have some topics and bring your usual smart comments, mostly smart comments, to the show tonight. So please, let's have some fun. Oh, Rick, by the way, June 3rd, June 4th, I've got Kenny in his bare feet, probably playing golf in the Loopies tournament. So wish me luck with that coming up. Oh my gosh, gonna be scary, huh? All right, enough of that. You know what I'm going to jump into first now? I don't want to jump into just yet. I want to talk a little bit about the former college football coach and former CEO of TD Ameritrade, one Joe Maglia, coached Coastal Carolina. When did he coach Coastal Carolina? I'm not sure. Let's see. He spent 16 years in coaching, then 17 years at Merrill Lynch, 8 at TD Ameritrade before returning to coaching at Nebraska. As the head coach, he brought Coastal Carolina into the winning program they are today. He elevated it from the FCS level to FBS, and he posted a 56-22 record in 6 seasons. And he handpicked current coach Jamie Chadwell, who has really brought Coastal Carolina to some great heights. But, excuse me, Coach Joe Maglia, who knows something about NCAA sports, who knows something about the world of business, has talked a lot this week about how to fix college sports and football, essentially, on a lot of different levels. It's got to do with, as I kind of have here, coaching contracts, the NCAA itself. Lots of things that he's jumped into to talk about how this needs to be fixed. The NCAA itself, for instance, there needs to be an executive committee in charge, according to Joe. The NCAA is an organization that simply is made up of schools. It's not a third-party group. It's people that are it's the schools really running the operation and policing themselves. The committees right now all the committees are made up of athletic directors and presidents. Mark Emmert, who's going to step down soon, has got very little real power, and his replacement is unlikely to have it either. And a lot of the problems in college sports and football specifically, we'll talk about tonight, stem from that absence of leadership and direction in recent years, and maybe specifically over the last year. So he thinks that we need to have an independent third-party committee that will oversee all things NCAA. Not the colleges, not the universities. They're the bosses. They determine the rules and they police them themselves. Well, they need somebody to police them, to keep them in line. Everybody needs somebody like that. You know, we all have a boss, whether it's your boss at work or your wife or, sorry, Tracy Sherlock or Rick Sherlock. But we've all got somebody that we are accountable to. Too often, these NCAA universities and presidents and athletic directors and coaches are left to police themselves and until they get into serious trouble, and then the NCAA has to do something about it. So I think he's right here that something needs to happen, and probably needs to happen soon. Or the NCAA is heading for serious trouble. This NIL, they made some rulings this week about it. That the collectives, we're going to talk a little bit about this too, as another topic probably tonight, that the NIL collectives are considered boosters, which means they can have no contact or direct access to recruits. Talked a lot about how this has been bastardized. And we'll talk more about it as we go forward. Another thing that Coach Maglio would like to see is the elimination of the signing period. It's not a new concept. A lot of coaches have called for getting rid of this. Most recently, Paul Johnson, who was with Georgia Tech until recently, Rich Rodriguez, who had a good run at West Virginia and then tanked at Michigan and later Arizona. But it would force schools to be upfront about players, about committable offers, and players would truly commit to a school. And they could sign at any time. They wouldn't have to wait. You know, maybe there has to be a date after which they can start, which is maybe after their senior year starts or whatnot. But, you know, the signing day thing is just another problem. You know, that the NCAA has continued to, you got your early signing, you got your late signings, and you can't sign people in between. You can't have contact here, there, and everywhere. You know, it's going to get to the point where it's going to be, you know, not manageable what's going on here. Because you're dealing with a lot of stuff. You're dealing with, again, NIL contracts that people have signed, and they're using them as recruiting tools. You know, there's going to become a point where these athletes are simply employees with contracts. You know, the structure, they need to get the structure and the foundation right here and build on top of that. Do you want employees or do you want students? Everybody loves the idea of the student athletes, but right now, you know, good student athletes, he's up for auction. And it's a ridiculous way for college to go about business. I agree with almost all of this that he talks about here. Even professional sports don't operate this way. You know, people aren't. You know, it's funny. I mean, and again, you hold these kids to their recruitment letters, right? The school and the kid sign a document, it's done. He can't be recruited anymore. And that's it. You got to make it stable. Part of the scholarship is you have to stay here at least a year. You know, 48 hours to sign after the offer is made and a 1-year commitment. This is what Joe Maglia thinks should be done. They need to, you know, again, all of these things tie into a lot of what we talked about with the NILs and how it's out of control with kids being offered more money. You know, you commit to a school and then you're offered more money somewhere else. So you uncommit and you sign somewhere else, or even once you're there, you start shopping yourself for better offers. This is not what college sports ought to be. Oh, what do you got here, Rick? Committees are a waste of time, usually can't resolve anything. Well, no, here, the thing is, you have to have, again, they have to be an impartial, outside, third-party committee given power. Again, the committees they have now are run by the schools. It's all athletic directors and presidents, Rick. It's almost like professional sports and the commissioners. The commissioners don't have any real power. They're hired by the owners. So in this case, the president of the NCAA is hired by the presidents of the NCAA schools. Who's going to, again, it's an awful way to go about business. It's like, if they came to us employees at my company and said, okay, I want you to hire your boss. That isn't the way it works in real life or even here. Fix the coaching contract market. And this is Joe, again, Muglia talking here. Professional sports coaches rarely voluntarily leave one team for another while under contract. That's because they can't. But in college, it happens all the time. They can be traded. You saw a few coaches traded. I know you saw John Gruden traded years ago from the Raiders to Tampa Bay. Baseball's had a couple of instances where coaches have been traded. But in college sports, college football specifically, we don't operate that way. Every year, the guys leave their contract, there's a buyout, and off they go. Moglia hates this. It's not how normal businesses work within lateral movement. The commitment he wants from players must also apply, meaning the coach, must also apply to the coach. Moglia is a former coach, and he views this as the executive's perspective, from the executive's perspective. Right now, I'll get your comments here in a second, guys. Right now, you've got a great year and somebody wants you. You can leave the next year. And with the portal the way it is, I've been saying all these things for weeks, guys, months. With the portal the way it is, all your best players can come with you. See Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams. See, Brian Kelly couldn't pull it off at LSU. He wanted to bring his coordinators with him. Well, one got the head job and another one said, no, I'm staying here, and Tommy Rees. If you sign a 5-year deal, you're supposed to be there 5 years, and nobody can poach you. Nobody should be even allowed to talk to them unless there's a 6 months left or something. There's a window. And again, it got to have approval by the university. Now, it would require the schools to get firmer with their coaches and contracts. But as Maglia says here, he sees schools that get run over by agents in the negotiating process. And it's just, and not just for the successful coaches. He's right. And again, this is very interesting. This is his exact quote here. Even if the future may be in doubt, they're encouraged by agents to extend the contract because of recruiting, and then they don't even honor it. And these are Joe's words. That's bullshit. All this stuff will blow up, and of course they will, because the NCAA flip-flops all the time, Carlos. I've told you this for a long time. You've been a big backer, and you've told me that I've been wrong about, I believe, unless my 62-year-old ears and mind have misunderstood or misheard. You have, until recently, been on the total opposite side of my opinion on this whole NIL thing. I told you it was a slippery slope. I told you it was being bastardized and that these collectives were illegal. Illegal might be the wrong term, but it goes against the fabric of the rules that were put in place. No recruiting, not to be used as a recruiting indictment. Well, it happened. And the coaches, and again, I've said this for a while, coaches being able to leave as much as they want, the transfer portal and the NIL sets this up for just nuts. Carlos is late. Pete Alonso hit a home run. Well, the Mets are up 3-0. Awesome. Over the Nats. We got our baseball update tonight. We had our hockey update earlier. We can talk about Barry Trotz on Friday and the Mets on Friday, Carlos. I promise you will get your chance to pick the topics this Friday. Let's continue with Joe Maglia's how to fix college football. Let's reorganize the FBS. Now, this is a little bit complex and controversial, of course. He doesn't really love, as someone who works for a group of, it's one that he doesn't love. Sorry. This restructuring is one who works for a group of 5 school. But from a business perspective, it makes sense to him. He believes the Power 5 conferences should band together on television contracts for more leverage. See, I don't know about if I agree with this topic or not. This would shut out the little guy. It's probably going to happen. And we've talked about this for a while, that the Power 5 conferences may pull away from the NCAA and run their own league. Not league, but I don't know what to call it. Yeah, league, I guess. Made up of their conferences. He also believes in what's essentially a super league. That a super league would make business sense and obviously further splitting the FBS. He says you look at 65 schools in a Power 5, pick half of them or so, and then you separate with Group 1 and Group 2. There's already been plenty of that. That's how we got to the FBS in the first place. There are different divisions and levels in college football, different than there is in any other sport. Well, not every other sport. I shouldn't say that. But even at the NCAA level, there are different levels. There's they used to call it 1A, right? Now it's FBS. And then you've got the league just a step below it, which is, I guess it's 1AA. That's where the Albany States of the world play, to use a local reference. He's very, very sold on this idea of a super conference and that power conference is moving away from the FBS. And I don't know if this is a good thing or not. I don't think this is the way to go about it. I agree with all his other talk. I don't like the idea of the super conference. I've had these discussions with Mac McGrath on the Mac and Jack show. He certainly believes the SEC is looking to build a super conference on its own and move off. I don't think that'll happen. But TV will run the show here. TV will determine what happens. And that's another problem. Let's see what we got here. Kenny has something that will fix that. He does. He does. Kenny, when I told him I had a 4th for our tournament, all he wanted to know is if he partied. He didn't care how he played golf. He wanted to know if he partied. Kenny, I wish you were with us tonight. I really do. Saving, very good point, Carlos. I was going to touch on this later. I don't think anything will stick here. Since you've brought it up, I will talk about it real quickly. NCAA is looking into Nick Saban and Alabama. And he's denied the allegations that anyone from the team violated NCAA rules in recruiting Louisville receiver Tyler Harrell before he entered the recruiting portal in April. Now, you can't do that. Until the kid's announced he's going into the transfer portal, you cannot engage with him. Probably nothing will happen here because it's Nick Saban, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. There's Carlos talking about the same thing. ESPN has 3 or 4 contracts. We're talking about football. Yeah, well, there's another problem, Carlos. Right? I mean, how do you feel if you're the Big 12? How do you feel if you're the Big 12, Carlos? Let me put this back up here. Well, I'm talking about this. How do you feel if you're the Big 12 and ESPN is actively involved in maneuvering Oklahoma and Texas towards the SEC, which was documented? I mean, come on. I mean, we don't have any it's becoming a monopoly because you got ESPN, you got ABC, CBS, NBC's got only Notre Dame and Fox. Fox has the weakest package of them all with the Big Ten. CBS has the strongest one, but CBS is losing in another, I think in 2024, maybe 2025. CBS will no longer have the that 3:30 window for the SEC game. The best window of all in all of college sports, in my mind. Used to be my favorite game to watch. I didn't care who was playing. But to watch Vern Lundquist and Gary Danielson was just a treat for me. Yeah, so the networks, while ESPN should not be negotiating and manipulating where teams go in all this realignment. It's gotten out of control, and it needs to stop. So anyway, those are some of the ideas that former coach, former coach of Coastal Carolina, still a coaching. Still in coaching in the NCAA, and also a person who's been involved in business and thinks the NCAA ought to be run like a business. Listen, I agree with some of his points here. I do not agree with the whole super conference thing, but Joe Maglia has really stirred up some things with this conversation that he's had recently about the NCAA and how he thinks it should be fixed. So some interesting stuff there. And guys, listen, as I say always, you got a topic, bring it up tonight, or almost any night here as we go through May, June, July, and part of August. We don't have games to talk about and stuff, so we got to talk about lots of other stuff, which we'll jump into right now. Let's take a look at the transfer portal, the spring transfer portal, if you will. Some of the best players that are still out there. And hopefully, I've got a couple sources here, so if we miss some guys that show available, we may catch them on the other. But right now, the number one, this is, just so I quote the source, this is by Tom Van Haren, ESPN writer. His top players still, and some of the places they would fit. Jordan Addison, wide receiver from Pittsburgh. USC seems to be in love with him, and putting him together with Caleb Williams is one thing that they're certainly looking to do. It's not, and again, this is another place where some tampering has been alleged a little bit. There's no allegations. Well, allegations have been made by Pittsburgh and Coach Pat Narduzzi, but saying that Riley did tamper with Addison before he hit the portal, but it hasn't reached the level of, say, the Saban allegations, right? Nobody's making an inquiry yet. So he's not happy with Riley. But his name's now officially in the portal. And it is possible he returns to Pitt, but certainly USC is looking at him. A player that has chosen a team, Achan Mathis, a defensive end from Nebraska, has chosen a Big 12 rival in TCU, and new coach Sonny Dykes. I always mix this up. That is where Sonny Dykes went, right? Let me check this out real quick. I mixed this up last week. I don't want to do it again this week. Sonny Dykes, new coach. Sonny Dykes has helped coach from Nebraska, one of the better defensive ends in the conference. He was redshirted his first year, and he played 12 games in 2019. He ranked most of last season as a team. Nebraska ranked high in total sacks in the conference. Well, I take that back. Nebraska ranked 101st last season in total sacks with 20. I read a 20 as where they were ranked. Ranked number 86 in quarterback pressures. So this is, whether this. whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, and I have this backwards again, the way they put these things is crazy. So Achan Mathis has left TCU, gone to Nebraska. Good grief. My God. Oh, boy. I'm going to get new glasses. Or new eyes. You know what? My cataract, I'm hoping, and Rick, you can probably appreciate this. We're going to dive off into Keith physical land now. I got a cataract started a little bit in my left eye, and I've reached a point where I'm kind of hoping it progresses so that I can get the surgery and insurance will pay for it. And then I won't need these progressive lenses where I need to look here to see you. I need to look like this to read a computer. I need to look like this to read what's in front of me. Anyway, let's back this up. Achan Mathis, now that I understand what I'm looking at here, his old team was TCU. His new team is Nebraska. So he will fortify what was a horrible pass rush for Nebraska. I had this down earlier. Oh, gosh. The number 3 rated prospect is from Arizona State, another program in operating under a cloud under Herm Edwards. He's a linebacker with Arizona State. He was a true freshman. He ranked 6th on the team in total tackles with 45. And he also had 5 tackles for a loss. USC is somebody who's talking to Gentry. And he would prefer to stay in the Big 12. But there are some other schools that are options, including Penn State, Miami, Texas, and Florida. The 4th prospect, Jalen Robinson from UCF, has not chosen a team. He had just 322 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns last year for the Knights. But he has taken a visit to Ole Miss. And, if there's a place you want to go to jumpstart your career as a receiver or a quarterback, Jalen Robinson is looking in the right place with Mr. Lane Kiffin. All right. Was I surprised that Hutchinson went number 2 in the draft? I was. Well, I think you're going to flip the coin. And I think it works out for him that he goes to Detroit, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously, hometown hero and all. But both those teams are in disarray. I really thought Jacksonville would take Hutchinson because I think he's a surer bet to succeed on the next level. But they wanted to go for this, what they saw, the superior athlete. I mean, he there's no doubt who the better athlete is. Who the better football player is, I'm still not sure. I think the better bet to succeed and succeed sooner would be Hutchinson, but that's, again, it's just, my opinion. Trayvon Walker went number 1 was more of a shock. I don't know who you thought would go number 1 then if you didn't think it would be Hutchinson or Walker, though, Carlos. Again, it depends on where you got to take some of these things. I can find guys ranked anywhere from 1 to 20 in some of these polls. These are the same. When you look at these mock drafts, Carlos, there was plenty of them that had Malik Willis in the top 3, barely went in the top 3 rounds. So again, if I want to find a place a guy's highly ranked or a poll that dismisses a player, it's not hard to do. It's a problem with mock drafts, right? Big hole for Michigan to fill, though. Nats just tied the game. Get our baseball updates while we do this. Another wide receiver, and another Arizona State Sun Devil is ranked 5 in Ricky Pearsall. As a junior, he led the team in receiving yards. He's had Florida shown interest, also with a new coaching staff out there. So it may be interesting to see where he ends up. And it's going to be interesting. I think Herm Edwards is probably done after this year, besides the cloud that still hangs over the program, and he's losing some of his best players right and left. Not a good sign when they start to jump the ship this way. Corey Kiner played with LSU last year, running back. His new team this year, Cincinnati Bearcats, looking to reload. They lost their number 1 runner last year in Jerome Ford, who had over 1,300 yards rushing and 10 touchdowns. And the second leading rusher was Desmond Ridder, their quarterback. So there was nobody in waiting, and Kiner gives Cincinnati some immediate talent at that position, and probably somebody who can fill in right away and do a moderately successful job. Cincinnati's going to have a lot of trouble repeating their success from the last 2 or 3 years, but they're still going to be a competitive football team, I would say. What's Carlos got here? I'm talking about the actual national. Well, all right. But again, I can find actual national gradings everywhere. Forget mock. Mock draft's just a term I used. There isn't one. Is there one national grading that every single entity uses, whether they're networks or colleges? There isn't. There's several places you can go to find these national rankings. I mean, I don't know where we get the idea that there's one Bible for this type of information. There isn't. So again, I can go to a bunch of different rankings and find, Walker anywhere from 1 to 15, and Malik Willis anywhere from 2 to 200. Not 200, 100. Who else we got? Wide receivers are leaving everywhere. LSU's losing Dion Smith, 109th ranked prospect in the 2021 class. He was a top 20 receiver out of Mississippi. He did have only 11 receptions for 186 yards last year with LSU. He's got a lot of talent and promise, and who knows where. He'll probably end up in the SEC somewhere. Another wide receiver who's chosen his team. Ajayi Hall, played for Alabama last year, is on his way to Texas. Top 35 recruit out of high school. But only 72 yards receiving last year. And let's not forget, though, Alabama had some pretty good guys in front of him in Michie III and Williams. And, again, that's a team that just reloads. They won't miss Ajayi Hall. Maybe he helps Steve Sarkisian and Texas, who needs to really make some moves here pretty quick. Carlos is all over the baseball coverage for us tonight on the College Football Huddle. Thank you, Carlos. See if there's anybody else here who strikes me. By the way, guys, speaking of the draft, undrafted free agents, I'm going to give you a player to watch out for. D'Eriq King, quarterback, Miami, signs with the New England Patriots. Do not expect him to be a quarterback. Watch out for them developing him as a wide receiver. He's a tremendous athlete. Remember, I'm not saying he'll break out this year. Don't be surprised if 5 years from now we're saying, what a brilliant signing by Bill Belichick. By the way, I said this about Braxton Berrios, who was an actual wide receiver out of Miami and actually drafted in the 6th round by the Patriots 3 years ago. And they couldn't wait for him to develop. And you see what he's become with the Jets. 5-star quarterback, yes, that's a very good move for Ohio State. Moves them up the draft rankings. Carlos is right on with this announcement. Or that's a 2024. By the way, if this kid ends up in yeah, I think it's hilarious that we're talking. It's part of what we were just talking about, right? I mean, if this kid ends up at Ohio State, it'll be shocking. He won't be in his class. Won't enter school for 2 more years. I have a hard time believing the 2023 classes will stay where they are. I was going to talk about it last a couple of weeks ago, the 2023 classes, but what's the point? These guys don't even stay. No, I'm not really interested in DUIs tonight. Yeah, that's not a good look for Kentucky or the player, obviously. And Kentucky, by the way, is going to have a good team this year. Kentucky's got a very good chance. Get out the portal for a second. I'm getting bored with it. Kentucky, I think, has got a very, very good chance to win that East this year. Sorry, Rick. Georgia's going to reload, and Georgia will be tough. But I think Tennessee and Kentucky are going to be pushing them a little bit this year. And I give Kentucky a little bit of an edge there. Stoops is a really good coach. And, they had a good year last year, going 10-3. Played in New Year's Day Bowl, I believe. Could be wrong about that, but I don't think so. They played in an easier division than, say, the West. The West is like a juggernaut with Bama, obviously, and Ole Miss certainly resurgent, Arkansas resurgent, Texas A&M improving under Mike Leach. I said Mississippi State, I hope. Texas A&M with the best draft class in ever, according to people with Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo Fisher, though, often has these great recruiting classes. And then you got LSU and Coach Brian Kelly. How long before Brian Kelly wishes he was back on the Notre Dame campus? Carlos won't be talking about the Mets anymore because since he started talking, they were up 3-0. They're down 5-3. Just an FYI. So anyway, this Southeast Conference, the West is a juggernaut. Brian Kelly's going to wish in a year he was back in Notre Dame. Any of these teams, it's a race to finish second every year. Behind Alabama, I understand. But even a race for seconds is as competitive as any conference in the league. What else is going on in the portal? Emory Jones. I'm looking for some names now. Emory Jones, who started a lot of games for Florida last year, he's in the portal. He earned the starting job, and Mullen then played Anthony Richardson. And, Jones never really got his footing at Florida. And it remains to be seen if any, major power conference team is going to be interested in Emory Jones going forward, at least this year. It's going to be very tough. Yeah, you know what, Carlos, they will be hurting for a few years. And, I wish John DeLon was here. I want to know what the shelf life is on Brian Kelly. I think his shelf life is about 3 years. He'd better find a way to get to an SEC championship game in 3 years. And if he doesn't, what then? Jerry Bohannon, that's a good transfer from UCF to Baylor. Baylor's likely going to have an open competition for the quarterback position. And Bohannon likely will have a chance to compete. Looking at some other ones here. Catch my eye. And again, these are just guys that have really gone in the last few months. The spring edition of the transfer portal. This doesn't really include all the guys from the spring. Certainly not going back that far. So the top quarterbacks, as you just said, Baylor has signed. Here's some guys that have signed. Quarterbacks signed. Del Rio Wilson to Florida, Bohannon to Baylor, Justin Rogers to UNLV, Ethan Long to Arizona State, and Tyson. Oh my God, I can't do this name. I can't do it. Clemson. I'm going to have to be calling him Tyson P. Now they got two quarterbacks, so I can't possibly say their name. Some commitments, spring quarterback commitments. JT Daniels leaves Georgia for West Virginia. Emory Jones, has signed with Arizona State, it looks like. My bad. We didn't notice that in the previous posting here. And Demetrius Davis goes from Auburn to Alabama State. That's a bit of a step down. Any notable? Well, we already talked about Kiner going from LSU to Cincinnati. Dylan McDuffie goes from Buffalo to Georgia Tech, another team that's just fallen on really hard times, Georgia Tech. Kyle Dobbins is out, has chosen Minnesota or Temple. We talked about the wide receivers. Well, there's a lot here. We'll see where these guys end up, and we'll talk about it more. Let's talk about another. You keep bypassing this topic. You keep throwing all this news at me, Carlos. But here's one thing you forget to bring up. Actually, Baylor. Baylor. You guys got me again. I should have looked for this myself, Carlos. I might have understand what you were talking about. Bulls. There you go. So Bahana went from Baylor to South Florida. I had this figured out until you had me change my page here. Now I'm all screwed up again. So he's been promised a job. Why? I mean, what do you think? Why do you think guys leave to go to other places, Carlos? They don't leave so they say, oh, yeah, come here and we'll let you compete for the job, when you could compete for the job where you are. And just because he's promised a job doesn't mean he'll get it, because these schools are not, known for sticking to their word. Anyway. Let's move on a little bit from the transfer portal, and I want to talk about. I'm going to get into this at the risk of giving myself a headache again. A ruling this week. The NCAA has ruled, and of course nobody will police this because we don't police anything. NIL collectives are subject to the same NCAA rules regarding boosters. The organization was reminded by the NCAA, I should say the membership was reminded by the organization on Monday that they're treated by the same rules as boosters, clarifying that longstanding rules prohibiting contact between boosters and recruits apply to groups of donors that pool money to pay players through NIL deals, otherwise known as collectives. Just what we've been talking about here, the fact that the rules have been bastardized, and now the NCAA is acknowledging that it's happening. The question is, now that they've clarified it, what are they going to do about it? Violations that occurred over the past 10 months may be pursued, the board said, but only the most severe violations of recruiting rules or payment for athletics and performance. Don't expect much to happen here, because the NCAA says we may pursue the most outrageous violations that were clearly contrary to the interim policy adopted last summer, which was ridiculous anyway, had no chance of being followed. But we're more focused on the future. Is there a more bogus, inept, backwards organization than the NCAA? Is there? Where? Show me one. We acknowledge that we screwed up last year, but we're not going to do anything about people who violated the rules we put into place that we didn't enforce. But don't step over this line this year. Like they're going to do something about it. Oh, my God. I just don't understand. I mean, we've talked about it for weeks on this show. I've talked about it in vlogs. Carlos, disagree with me about the NILs. They're all marketing companies. Well, maybe that's not paying attention. Wish I could find this guy's name in Miami. This guy who's got like, I don't know, 100 NIL deals with Hurricane athletes. Hang on one second. Let me see if I can find it quick. You tell me if this guy sounds like a marketing company. Is this the guy? There it is. By the way, he's a booster. John Ruiz, the third most ambitious name, image, and likeness collective, named by probably a company that Carlos can recognize, on3.com. See if this is, we'll give some of the stuff that I found as our other article. The majority of the transfers Miami's added during the 2022 offseason have come from much smaller markets. Damn, I wanted the one that showed the total monies that he had. There it is. He's allocated $10 million to spend on compensating student athletes because he wants the Hurricanes to win. This is a booster. This isn't a marketing firm. He's worked to sign more than 110 active Miami athletes to marketing deals. He's a booster. How can he actively work with them to sign deals? By the way, in case you think I'm picking on somebody, I'm picking on a school that I root for. Nigel Peck, who recently transferred from Kansas State's men's basketball team to Miami, agreed to a Life Wallet deal negotiated by Ruiz. I'm not saying there aren't real companies that are giving the kids the money, but the boosters are involved as the middleman, totally against the rules of the NCAA. He's agreed to an $800,000 deal over 2 years and the use of a car. The women haven't been left out either. Hannah Cavender, prominent. No, that's not what I'm looking for. They don't have any deal. They don't have any specifics on the women. But Jesus, I mean, this is exactly what I've been talking about. I got his name, Ruiz. I found it. Thank you. Well, again, totally what's wrong with this whole thing. This is the perfect example of what's wrong. And the NCAA now acknowledges that there's been many recruiting violations caused by this NIL ruling that they refused to enforce and said the schools could police themselves if the states didn't have legislation. More NCAA nonsense. And I'm moving on. Let's talk about another topic. We talked about teams getting better. Let's talk about, I want to talk about which FBS school in Texas makes the playoff first. Now, Texas's path is going to get much, much tougher, obviously, as they move to the SEC in 2 years' time. So that leaves schools like Baylor that are on the rise. TCU has got a new coach in Sonny Dykes, who had great success at SMU and some success before that out west with Fresno State. You've got Jimbo Fisher, who signed, again, what it keeps being called the highest rating class in modern recruiting history. All he needs to do is win games now, and he'll be all set. But they keep, Alabama's not going away. Texas Tech has a new coach in Joey McGuire, but Texas Tech is not close to a playoff. Texas does have, a little bit more upside on recruiting this year, but I know, and Dion Robinson will be back. Bijan, however you say his name, Bijan, I guess. Bijan Robinson and 5-star quarterback Quinn Ewers. It's possible that Texas rises up a bit this year, but again, if they want to make a playoff, they ought to do it now while they're in the Big 12 and not wait till they get to the big boys of the SEC. I mean, who are the other competitors in the state of Texas in FBS 1? You could make an argument that who am I thinking of? God. The mind is a terrible thing to waste. I'll find him here in a second. Talk amongst yourself. UTSA. Who knows? Maybe they're the next group of 5 that rises up and claims a playoff spot. Doubtful. Got a really good head coach who they locked up for a long time. I'll make an argument that team's got as good a chance of getting to a playoff as Texas Tech or TCU. I think Baylor might be in the best position to compete for a championship of all those Texas schools. The first 2 years of Dave Aranda's tenure have been a very good progression towards winning the Big 12 and possibly getting that playoff berth. I wish Alan were here tonight. Let's go. Carlos has still got the NIL going on here. Rez is doing great, even using his cigarette company. He's doing great. Oh, you're laughing. Okay. Please, thank you for the LOL. Houston is a good talk. Texas El Paso is not going to go to playoff. Houston's a possibility. Got a really good football team. Cincinnati showed a non-Power 5 can get there, and in a year or 2 years, they'll be in a Power 5 conference. SMU lost their coach. Sonny Dykes had a lot to do with that build-up over the last few years too, Carlos. But look at all good football teams. You look through some of the conferences, as you mentioned in the American Conference. You got Houston, finished 17th last year. SMU was ranked for a good part of the year. Nobody in the ACC, right? You never even know where these schools are anymore. Big 12 obviously has Baylor. And they have Texas, who will probably rebound a bit. I don't expect that team to go, 4-7, 5-7 again next year. TCU will get better under Sonny Dykes, but it'll probably take some time. Texas Tech is eons away from competing for a national championship. Hard to believe there's no teams in Texas in the Big Ten. Conference USA, we already talked about UTSA. That's Texas San Antonio. They got the National Texas Mean Green, too. No, I don't see them. The Miners, I don't see them, Carlos. I know you mentioned them. Rice, no. I'll probably miss a couple here, but anybody else? Any other contenders? Who's out in the Mountain West? They don't have any Texas teams? Apparently not. Big 12. Big 12, by the way, was very close to have. I'm sorry, not the Big 12. The Pac-12 was very close to having Texas at one time. Pac-12 stretching from the Pacific Ocean to Austin, Texas. So it'd be awesome. Southeastern Conference, you have Texas A&M. I'm going to say Texas A&M and Baylor are probably the two closest. But Texas A&M, it's time for Jimbo Fisher to do what or get off the pot. All I ever hear, he's a great recruiter, but he doesn't win. Sunbelt, Texas State Bobcats? Don't think so. So that's my 2 cents on the Texas teams. What do you got here, Carlos? Austin P will be playing. Where did they go to, Carlos? Help me out. Let's take a look. For you, Carlos, tonight, we'll take a look at the Austin P outlook. I think they went to Texas. Didn't they go to Conference USA? Oh, maybe this is last year's. Maybe I'm not going to see it here. What conference did they go to, Carlos? Help me out. Yeah. Why the hell can I not find it? Because they're not an FBS school. That's why I can't find it, Carlos. I'm only looking at FBS schools here. So they can't make it to a playoff. Not an NCAA playoff, anyway. Maybe they'll do better in a college basketball tournament, but we'll see. Oh, God, what else we got tonight? So it's a quiet night in football, kind of. Let's look at some other news and notes real quick, and maybe we'll go to the mailbag, see what we got in there. Let's look at some other news. The ACC discusses a 3-5-5 model, no divisions. So they got a couple schools looking at changing their scheduling. The ACC is one. I believe the SEC is another. But several athletic directors have discussed a 3-5-5 scheduling model in which the league teams would play 3 permanent opponents, then rotate the rest over a 2-year period. 5 one year, 5 the next. No divisions. Earlier this week, the NCAA Oversight Committee recommended conferences no longer be required to have divisions and hold conference championship games to be considered for the playoff. That was one of the problems with the Big 12 for a long time. He also was also repeatedly said conferences should have the right to determine their conference championship, whether it be by regular season or a playoff game. So again, if these schools start doing stuff like this, then what's the NCAA going to do? And what's the college football playoff going to do? Which isn't necessarily answerable to the NCAA. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with this type of, action going forward. What else? So we talked about Saban. We talked about Ohio State's 2024 recruit. We talked about the NCAA booster guidelines. Unfortunately, we talked about Rodriguez. Arrested for DUI. Not a good look, right? I don't know what these kids think about. I mean, I don't know what the kids think or the schools think about. These kids need more supervision. There's too much free time. There's too much stuff going on. Kenny Gifford. Good evening, Kenny. Good to see you tonight. You were a topic earlier by Rick Sherlock. I cannot divulge what was discussed, but you can take it up with him. Trying to see if there's anything else. What else we got we haven't talked about? Kenny, got to have a topic tonight, don't you? I don't want to get into rules changes now. Come on, Carlos. What else you got for us tonight? SEC again. They hope to look at a new scheduling model as well. What are they looking at? They look at this. They can't be looking at 3-5-5. That wouldn't work. The current format, they have an 8-game SEC schedule and 2 divisions. There are too many examples of cross-division matchups happening rarely, like Georgia and Texas. Georgia, Texas A&M have played once since the Aggies joined the SEC, which I think was in 2012. I could be wrong. So they're looking at a 9-game conference schedule. And with Texas and Oklahoma joining the league, it makes it more sense to go to 9 games, especially since those two schools already had series scheduled at SEC teams. So I don't know. Again, I'd have to see what this is all about. Again, here's what I want. I want these schools, because they've screwed up all these traditional rivalries, to figure out a way to put a schedule together where we can keep some of them. I mean, the good thing about Texas coming to the SEC is you're going to get Texas A&M again, theoretically. But what if it happens at once every 12 years, like it happens with Texas A&M and Georgia? Carlos, there are rules for spring that coaches can't be with the guys. Again, I didn't say there's other ways to well, I'm not talking that they should have a shadow 24/7, Carlos, but it's time to be more than just a football coach and also teach these guys how to be functioning adults in society as well. And I understand they're kids and they're going to make mistakes. I'm not going to ask you what you're watching grow, Carlos, or Kenny. And Carlos, you should be wary that if you come up here for one of our happy hours and stay on the estate, the mountain estate of one Ken Gifford, you know, I don't know what makes things grow on his property. I'm just saying, just be careful. Just kidding, Kenny. These coaches cannot be around players all the time during spring season. I understand that. I'm not talking about shadowing them 24/7. There are other people who can have contact with players, by the way, outside of coaches, who are involved with the colleges and the programs. I guarantee you they're hanging out at Booster's house. This kid was probably at a pool party at one of the big boosters who was pitching him a new NIL. So, I mean, come on. Let's see if there's anything interesting in the mailbag here. Oh, I don't want to talk about that. Okay, let's look at this. Everything in the mailbag is about everything in the mailbag is about the NIL. I've talked about the NIL till I'm blue in the face. God, I'm so sick of it. Has Stanford lost its has it lost its identity? David Shaw was one of the great coaches in the country with Stanford. They're struggling in a bad Pac-12. You know, I talked about this last week or a few weeks back. You know, he had a disastrous 2021 season. He built up his reputation with 3 Pac-12 championships during his first 5 seasons, but he finished 3-9 last season. Its worst season since 2006. And it's the second consecutive full season the Cardinals have finished below 500. David Shaw was one of the rising stars in this sport, and he was mentioned for many NFL jobs, if you remember, when he was on the rise. But the fall has been hard for Stanford. I mean, they lost 52-7 to Utah, 35-14 to Oregon State, 41-11 to Cal. Ugly. Let's see what Carlos is talking about. I don't know if I want to put this up there, Carlos. They have a workout schedule, but even that's not enforced. Nothing's enforced in the NCAA. Not correct. There's nothing fun in Lexington. I'm not sure what you're kidding about there. There's Alan. Alan, we were just talking about the team most likely to reach the NCAA playoff from Texas. My pick is Baylor or Texas A&M. And Baylor, I think, has got a better shot than Texas A&M because Jimbo Fisher can recruit, but he can't win. Alan says early odds in Vegas have Oklahoma favored to win the Big 12. Weirdly, though, Texas second. Listen, Texas is going to rebound. The Big 12, I'm glad you're here to liven this conversation up a little, Alan. I love to talk some Big 12 with Alan. Oops, hold on. Trying to get to your conference. So the Big 12, Oklahoma, listen, Texas will probably bounce back from that 6-7 record. I talked about it a few minutes ago. So I wouldn't be surprised. You know, I'm not surprised to see them. I mean, and plus people jump on the name recognition of the program, right? Oklahoma State, I can see third. Baylor, I think, yes, I think much disrespect for the Bears and what David Aranda has done there over these 2 years and what he did last year with a tremendous defense. And I think he will continue to build on that momentum. I think this conference will again probably – you see, Oklahoma, I think, may take a step back in Venables' first year here. I think there's going to be an adjustment period, Alan, as they get accustomed to a new coaching staff, a new field general at quarterback. I think Oklahoma steps back. And I think this is going to come down to, again, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. And then watch out for Iowa State. Down year last year, but Matt Campbell's a really good coach. I know he lost his quarterback and some other key players. But I think when this team is at their most dangerous is when nothing's expected of them. Last year, they didn't live up to expectations. But the rest of this league is probably not going to be very good. At the top four teams, Oklahoma State, Baylor, Oklahoma, and Texas, with Iowa State possibly making a jump. But the rest of the league, West Virginia is not going to be very good. TCU will be better with Sonny Dykes, but he's got some building to do, just like he did at SMU when he got there. Texas Tech, new head coach, same old problems. They're Texas Tech. And Kansas is Kansas. And Kansas State, by the way, also is a middling at best team. Allen takes us to the Pac-12. USC favored to win the Pac-12. I'm on Utah here. I just can't get on board with Lincoln Riley taking this league by storm with a team. Again, it's not devoid of talent, but I just don't see him jumping that far in 1 year. It's possible. It's happened. But I see Utah really as a class of this league. Oregon will be tough as they always are. UCLA and USC, I think, will compete for second place in the South behind Utah. And we'll dive into more of this as we start to see these teams come together as we go through the summer. Carlos talks about Clemson being back in the mix. Yes, if they fix their offensive problems. I mean, for everything that we hear about, and look at a down year when you're Clemson and you go, what do they go? I mean, they were 10-3 last year. That's a really good season for most teams. It would have been a good season for Clemson in most years before the last 6 or 7. Since Debo Swinney's been there, they've been a national championship contender until last year. And the fall feels harder. They're ranked 14th in the country at the end of the season. It's not terrible, but the offense was terrible. And they have to fix that. If they can fix that, yes, they can get back in the hunt. But the ACC, and I know you disagree with me, Carlos, is deep. I do. In the coast, well, in Clemson's Atlantic Division, Wake Forest will be as good as they'll be as good as their offense can play. So they'll go as far as their offense can take them. I mean, if they play just a modicum of defense and pretend that they're going to try to stop somebody, this team could win that division again. NC State, I think, will be better than they were last year when they were 9-3 and made a run at the Atlantic Division. Florida State will be better. Mike Norvell's on he's a dead man walking if he doesn't win this year. Deion Sanders is sitting at the door. Florida State will be better. I don't know that they'll compete for the division. Syracuse, Dino Babers is fighting for his job as well, but I doubt Syracuse is going to turn this thing around. Boston College, watch out for Boston College. They could be sneaky. They could be the NC State of this year. Possibly. But I think this division comes down to Wake Forest and Clemson with North Carolina State sneaking it out or sneaking in the picture. The Coastal, listen, for me, this division is wide open for Miami and Marco Cristobal to take in year one. The division's not that good. Pittsburgh has lost their starting quarterback, and they've lost their star wide receiver now to the transfer portal if he doesn't return. Virginia Tech's got a new coach. Virginia's got a new coach. North Carolina's really rebuilding under Mac Jones. And Georgia Tech and Duke are terrible. I think this is wide open for Miami to get into the ACC championship game. Kansas State, fifth best odds in the Big 12. I've never been a big. I was a big K-State fan when Bill Snyder was there and had this program running on all cylinders for 10 or 12 years back in the 90s and early 2000s. But Kansas State is not a good football program anymore. I don't doubt that the Cyclones weren't in the top five, Alan. All I said was, and I'm not telling you they're going to win that league. I'm telling you that watch out. Matt Campbell, he does his best work when nothing is expected of him. This is a guy who wants to, his stock dropped a little this year. So they need to pick it up. Duke and Georgia Tech, right? You got games against Duke, Georgia Tech, North Carolina. I'm going to look at Miami's schedule right now. Let's see if I can look at their schedule. Hold on. They got who the heck is this? Bethune-Cookman in week one. Well, there's a win. They have Southern Mississippi. Could give them a game. Doubtful. It's at home. Both those games are at home. Boy, they're playing some cupcakes early. Wow. Oh, then they get Texas A&M on the road. That's going to be a tough matchup for Miami. I'll give them 2-1. Then they come back home and play Middle Tennessee. Jesus, good grief. Marco, great job with the scheduling. I guess he didn't do this. 3-1. They'll beat Carolina at home. They'll beat Virginia Tech. It's 5-1. They'll beat Duke 6-1. They'll beat Virginia 7-1. FSU could be tough, but I'm going to give them the win 8-1. Georgia Tech 9-1. Clemson, that's going to be the game for them. 9-2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 9-2, and I think they beat Pittsburgh. I can see this team 10-2. One loss in the conference to Clemson and going to the championship game in the ACC. listen, I don't look at that Atlantic Coast, that Atlantic division is not that bad, Carlos. Clemson, as you already said, will rebound this year. I think you said that. Wake Forest is still good. That offense will be clicking on all cylinders, and it'll go as far as their defense takes them. NC State will probably be better than last year. Florida State will be better than last year. Florida State played pretty good football after getting off to a horrendous start. Mike Norvell's coaching for his job, and I think Florida State will be better. Anyway, and I think Boston College will be better. So I think that Atlantic Division is look, it's not the SEC. Don't get me wrong. I understand that. But it's as good as, I think that Atlantic Division is as good as, the Big Ten West with Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Purdue, Illinois, Nebraska, and Northwestern. It's as good as that division. Might be as good as the SEC East. Okay, that's why we play the games, right? To have some fun. That's why we have this show, to have some fun. What else you got, Alan? Tell me, Alan, who do you pick to be the first Texas team to reach the 4-team college football playoff? I'm sticking with Baylor. If I want to take a long shot, and it's a few years away from getting there, it would be Sonny Dykes at TCU. Well, unfortunately, the ACC never broke up. They added teams. So broke up isn't the right terminology, Carlos. So if they broke up, they'd be doing it for the first time. Unless you're saying they should break up into what they used to be, which is never happening with any of these schools. Now, again, to go back to what we talked about with the super conferences, you might see the Clemsons and the Ohio States going to the SEC and forming the super conference. It might happen. You know what, Carlos, this is a good point. Finally, you brought me something. I love the Southwest Athletic Conference. Was a great football conference. And all, if I'm not mistaken, except for Arkansas, all from Texas. Going back, Arkansas was the first school to leave the Southwestern Athletic Conference. If we're talking about the same league, Carlos, I know sometimes I'm older and I don't remember. And if I'm wrong, you can correct me. But the Southwest Athletic Conference, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Baylor, Houston, Arkansas, TCU was there after a while. Rice, SMU, pretty good league. Alas, money took them away. Oh, it's just crazy. Absolutely crazy. Anyway, lost track of my thoughts. Sorry. I got a text from my massage therapist. Always distracts me. Don't read too much into that, please. Oh, we're running out of time here. Let's continue. Look, it was, Carlos. And now you're going back to a time when college football was at its peak in my mind. Before the schools the conferences started to realign, and the Big Ten was the Big Ten. There was 10 schools. The Pac-8 and the Big 8. Big 8 was a great conference. Nebraska, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Colorado, Kansas State. Pac-10, all schools in California and up the coast. They brought in Arizona and Arizona State later. Those days are gone. They're never going to be seen again. And it's sad. That was a heyday. Arkansas it's funny because the Southwest Conference was probably the precursor of everything that happened. Arkansas was the first team to jump and go to the SEC. Not a huge wave at that point in time, but it had a ripple effect. Then we started seeing Texas A&M peel off, and we saw Texas and TCU and Baylor. I don't think they all went at once. TCU. I think some of these schools. I know Texas and Baylor went to the Big 12, but I don't think that TCU, and I'd have to go back and look which teams came and went. TCU and Texas Tech and some other schools didn't go to the Big 12 until like Colorado left to go to the Pac-12, and you just had a ripple effect all over college football. I asked Alan a question. I don't want to lose him before we have to sign out of here, and I will make an announcement here at the end too. As far as the Texas team prediction, A&M has the best chance. They got the best recruits, but they've done a very poor job of putting those recruits into play. I will say that. Baylor would say could sneak in. Texas, no, I don't see Texas. And it's only going to get harder for Texas. They could shock the world and get in there through the Big 12, but once they get to the SEC, it's going to get harder. Yeah, good point. Carlos made the same point with Houston. They could make that run this year, to be honest with you, based on Cincinnati's success last year. They have an undefeated run through the American Conference and beat a couple of good I don't know what their schedule is. They have anybody? Let's see what they got here real quick. They have a real good non-conference game? No, they don't. They're going to have trouble. Texas Tech is they got Texas Tech and KU. It won't be this year. Yeah. When your best non-conference games are Texas Tech and Kansas, that's not good. But yes, once they get to the Big 12, they'll have a chance. And Carlos had talked about Houston as well. Don't rule out TCU. I see TCU again in a couple of years regaining some of the prominence they had under the early Gary Patterson years, or mid Gary Patterson years, if you will. And I think it'll take some time to build that team back up and build it in the image that Sonny Dykes, who may be the polar opposite of Gary Patterson as a coach and also philosophy-wise. It'll be interesting to see what happens. So, guys, we're about done for tonight. We're going to go out with the promo for the Dream Ride experience, August 26th to 28th. Northeast Streaming Sports is a big sponsor of this event. They've raised lots of money They've raised lots of money for the Homeland Foundation. Homefront Foundation over the years, and they continue to do that. And it's been a really good event. And I'll play that video as soon as we sign off here. And we did mention SMU a little bit too, but again, they're going to have to get to a better conference probably to have that chance. As we see, Cincinnati is going to be an outlier with the Power 5, breaking that Power 5 stranglehold on the playoffs. So, guys, great night tonight. I know it's tough with no college football to really chat about other than off-season stuff. That's why I really love when you guys come in and participate the way you have. Thanks to Carlos, and Alan, and Kenny, and Rick Sherlock, and anybody else who participated tonight. Anybody who watches this later on, feel free to comment. I will get back to you. Have a great night. Keith Engel for TGI Sports Talk right here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. Please watch this promo, and we'll see you next week. Have a great night.
The Hometown Foundation is excited to bring back the Dream Ride experience, August 26th to the 28th at Connecticut's Farmington Polo Club. Join us in celebrating the accomplishments of our Dream Riders while enjoying live music, a car and motorcycle show, family fun zone, pet adoptions, canine demonstrations, the Fireman's Chili Cook-Off, and much, much more. Get your tickets today.